In the last chapter, I shared how everything eventually became about him. Looking back now, I can see how my needs slowly disappeared while he seemed to take up all the space in the relationship. But if I'm honest, that's not the part that still troubles me the most. What troubles me most is this: if the man I eventually married had shown me who he truly was on the first date, I never would have married him. And that's what took me years to understand. The story didn't begin with control. It didn't begin with loneliness. It didn't begin with emotional distance. It began with a man who seemed almost too good to be true. I can still remember those early conversations, the way he listened so carefully. He seemed genuinely interested in everything I had to say. He asked questions. He remembered details. He made me feel seen. At least that's how it felt. Looking back now, I realize there is a difference between someone seeing you and someone studying you. At the time, I couldn't tell the difference. I thought I had met a man who understood me, a man who shared my values and who wanted the same things I wanted, who wanted to build a future together. After years of disappointment and relationships that never seemed to go anywhere, his confidence felt comforting. I didn't know then that certainty can sometimes be mistaken for character, and confidence can sometimes hide things you aren't looking for. The truth is, some moments didn't quite make sense. Little things, nothing dramatic, nothing I could point to and say, that's the reason. Just moments that left me feeling confused. Stories that changed slightly depending on who was listening. People he seemed determined to impress. Conversations that somehow always found a way back to him. Comments that felt dismissive but were quickly covered by charm. But every time I noticed something, another version of him would appear. The attentive version, the affectionate version, the thoughtful version. And I convinced myself that was the real him. I think that's one of the hardest things to explain to people who have never lived through it. Most of us imagine unhealthy relationships beginning with obvious warning signs, but often they begin with hope. They begin with possibility. They begin with believing you finally found someone who understands you. That's why it's so easy to overlook what doesn't fit. I remember introducing him to family and friends. Everyone seemed impressed. He knew how to make a room like him. He knew how to tell stories. He knew how to make people laugh. He knew exactly how to present himself with a mask. And because everyone else seemed comfortable around him, I became even more comfortable. After all, if nobody else saw a problem, maybe there wasn't one. What I didn't realize was that public charm and private character are not always the same thing. Some people work very hard to manage how they're perceived, and some people become so skilled at it that even the people closest to them struggle to see what's underneath. As the relationship progressed, I began to notice something else. The attention I received in the beginning started becoming less consistent. Not gone, just inconsistent. One day he would be attentive. The next day he seemed distant. One day he wanted to talk for hours. The next day it felt like I was competing with everything else for his attention. I didn't understand it. So I did what many women do. I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't communicating well enough. Maybe I was expecting too much. Maybe relationships naturally change once the excitement fades. What I didn't consider was that I was spending more time explaining his behavior than he was. And that's a dangerous place to be. Because once you become the person constantly providing explanations, you stop paying attention to what is happening. You start managing your discomfort instead of investigating it. And that's exactly what I did. The relationship moved forward, the plans became bigger, the commitment became deeper. And with every new milestone, it became harder to question what I was feeling. After all, people don't usually question something they've invested so much into. They defend, protect, and explain it. And that's exactly what I was doing. Protecting the dream and the future I imagined, and the version of him I wanted to believe was real. Then marriage entered the picture. And that's when something began to shift. Not all at once, just enough to make me wonder. The effort that once seemed natural became less frequent. The curiosity about my thoughts and my feelings slowly faded. And for the first time, I found myself asking a question I couldn't quite answer. Who was I married to? Because the man standing in front of me seemed different from the man I remembered. I kept waiting for the person I met in the beginning to return. The thoughtful version, the attentive version. The version seemed so interested in building a life together. I told myself marriage was hard. I told myself everyone goes through seasons. I even fooled myself into believing things would improve. What I didn't understand then is that I was waiting for a version of him that may have never truly existed. And that realization would take me years to face. Because what happened next wasn't about discovering who he was. It was about discovering what marriage was becoming. The friendship began fading. The connection began fading. Intimacy was non-existent. And before long, I found myself feeling something I never expected to feel while lying beside my husband every night. Loneliness. The kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone. The kind that comes from being unseen. And that's where this story goes next. Because once the mask started slipping, I began seeing things I couldn't unsee. And the marriage I thought I was building slowly became a place where I felt more alone than I ever had by myself. We're not just telling stories here. We're rewriting them.
Yeah. Oh, he wore that smile like gold, polished right down to the bone. But when the room went still, I saw the crack beneath the stone. Your eyes gave you away, that twitch, that tired little stare. You kept your hands so clean, but I could smell the truth in there. And I tried to look away, tried to call it something else, but the mask fell slow. And you stood there by yourself.